Well, our international editor, Isabel Oakeshott, is in the studio. Isabel, what's your assessment of what's happening there? We talked about the sort of calm before the storm. Still some rockets and shells being exchanged, but actually this ground offensive is the focus now, isn't it?
Absolutely, and a great build-up and level of preparation there, and presumably a great deal of thinking about how it's going to be possible to minimise the scenes of horror amongst civilians. The other thing that's been going on today is the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken issuing most powerful message of support to the Israelis and to Benjamin Netanyahu. He said, "The message that I bring to Israel is this: you may be strong enough on your own to defend yourselves, but as long as America exists, you will never, ever have to." And I think that's very powerful, because we've heard the Israeli leadership saying, you know, this is not like it was during the Nazi regime, during the Holocaust. We are now strong enough to fight back, and we will be fighting back. You've got the US saying, listen, we've got your back. That is exactly what they have said.
It is interesting, though, we sort of forget how big the Israeli military is, not just because of compulsory national service, but because of all the reservists that are there. I mean, people are asking, what can the UK military do to help the Israeli military, for example? People are asking that question. I mean, we have a much smaller military.
Not a lot.
Much smaller. And I mean, Israel is about the size of Wales, yet it has a much bigger military because it has had to.
And a very, very good one. I mean, when I was studying the state of the armed forces in the UK, you know, talking to a huge numbers of defence experts, I'd always ask who has the best, you know, the best armed forces in the world. And actually, the time and again, when the answer's not Britain, because we have fantastic special forces and there's certain things that we still do brilliantly, actually the Israelis usually have the edge on almost everybody else apart from the US and the UK. So they've got the technology, they've got the kit, they've got the hardware, the software, evidently not quite the intelligence that we thought that they had.
And that has been a big failure. I mean, we're focusing so much in terms of what has happened. James Cleverly's been over there, the UK Foreign Secretary. The families of British diplomats have been told to leave Israel. But it's interesting as well. I mean, it was a catastrophic intelligence failure when this came basically out of nowhere, and you had Mossad, one of the best intelligence services in the world, who were caught unawares by this.
And I think there's a lot yet to come out about this. Evidently, there were certain warnings. We've heard a number of reports that there were warnings that came out of Egypt that something big was brewing. How much did they know? Perhaps they knew that something was coming but had no idea of the scale of it. Why was there a decision taken on the basis of intelligence that something was brewing, not to do anything at all? Or in fact were measures taken but we just haven't heard about them yet, which prevented something even bigger and worse? Hard though it is to imagine what that would look like.
Yes, indeed. And in terms of what we know about this ground offensive, we heard from Yotam there that obviously this is being prepared, but it could be really big, bloody, and go on for a very, very long time. We've seen what, you know, we know how big Gaza is. We know that Israel has not been in Gaza since 2005, but this ground offensive, it's going to be massive, isn't it?
Yes, but then in a sense, the actual geography that you're looking at isn't massive. I mean, it's the size of, I've said this a few times, just because it really sticks in my mind, the area of land we're talking about is the size of the Isle of Wight. So we're not talking a vast area. It's not like trying to fight the Taliban in the mountains of Afghanistan, where you're trying to find people who are hiding in caves and are completely inaccessible. The issue you've got here is the total integration of a civilian population. I mean, it's not like your targets here are going to be in one kind of compound somewhere.
Yes.
They are well distributed across the whole
and
thing.
The fact that they deliberately hide in schools, hospitals, places they know that if you bomb them, there will be civilian casualties. And I mean, they've got the propaganda victory kind of built into this, haven't they?
Well, I don't think they're going to win any propaganda victories, but, you know, as we were saying at the beginning of the conversation, international moods are delicate things. They can change quite quickly. Very interesting to hear Douglas Murray on our colleague Julia Hartley-Brewer's show earlier, talking about the notion of proportionality when it comes to warfare. You know, what is a proportionate response? Is that just a nonsense? You know, are we actually going to should one side look to exact an eye for an eye in precisely the same numerical terms? What is proportionality? And certainly there will be some thinking going on amongst wise heads, urging if there is any possible restraint to be had.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just on another matter, but a related one, we're going to be talking in just a few minutes, actually, to someone from the BBC, a BBC reporter, who's decided to quit over the fact that the BBC won't apparently call Hamas terrorists. They call them militants. I just wonder what you make of this story, because
I think it's absurd, isn't it? It's
absurd.
Absolutely absurd. Let's call a spade a spade. What are they? What are these people who are chopping the heads off babies, who are murdering babies, who are setting fire to corpses, who are raping women on the bodies of other women that they have killed, who are going from house to house, blowing the doors open of safe cellars and so on, to haul out screaming children and mothers and innocent men, women and children, and butchering them? What are those people if they are not terrorists? And if we can't call them terrorists, then what the earth are we doing supporting with our taxpayers' money a BBC that is unable to articulate the blindingly obvious?
Cambridge English Dictionary, I have the definition in front of me. Terrorist, someone who uses violent action or threats of violent action for political purposes.
Idiots is my definition of what the BBC is at the moment.
It's really, really, really straightforward, isn't it?
Yeah, it shouldn't be complicated, and I don't care to hear the argument that this is how it's always been. I've heard a lot of pontificating about how they've never done this, so they can't do it now. Well, you know what? Times have changed, and I think it's time to stop treating audiences as if they're as if they are too unintelligent to realise what it is they're seeing.
Well, John Simpson is the BBC's World Affairs editor. He says British politicians know perfectly well why the BBC avoids the word terrorist, and over the years plenty of them have privately agreed with it. Calling someone a terrorist means you're taking sides and ceasing to treat the situation with due impartiality. The BBC's job is to place the facts before its audience and let them decide what they think, honestly and without ranting. That's why in Britain and throughout the world nearly 500 million people watch, listen to and read us. There's always someone who would like us to rant. Sorry, it's not what we do. Calling someone a terrorist isn't ranting, it's just factual.
It's just a description of an actuality, and that is what the BBC should know how to do and should do well.
Yeah. Isabel, thank you very much indeed. This is Isabel Oakeshott, our international editor here at TalkTV.